Welcome, everyone, to Season 1. Can it be possible? Episode 3 of the Games People Play with Bernie Corbett. I'm Bernie Corbett. We welcome everybody in here today, and very pleased to have with us, as we mentioned last week, our first visit to the hardwood. We were on the ice last week with Eddie Olczyk. We were on the diamond with Reggie Smith in week 1, and we're going to have one of the NBA's top 50 all-time performers with Robert Parish joining us here today. Want to remind you right off the top that none of this would be possible without our good friend Kirsten Kelly at Kelly Sports and Consulting. GPP, Games People Play, brought to you by Kelly Sports and Consulting. There'd be no Robert without Kirsten this week. We thank her, and I want to remind everybody, if you're looking for a pro athlete, former or current, for personal appearances, sales presentations, trade shows, corporate appearances, there's only one call to make, and trust us, it's Kelly Sports and Consulting. They are the folks that can help. And you can call Kirsten at 781-888-2791, or you can check her out on Facebook at Kelly Sports and Consulting. I want to thank her. Also, want to thank our good friend Phil Castanetti at Sports World, which was our home the first 2 weeks. We're starting to move around the circuit a little bit. And, of course, Phil is the impresario of New England's largest sports memorabilia shop since 1986 on beautiful Route 1, bucolic Route 1 in Saugus. And Phil wants to remind us that he's got some great items, Robert Parish related, Sports Illustrated, the great cover from 1984. Also, some Big Three memorabilia, which you can't be without in your rec room. And also, Phil is now, well, who else but Phil? He's selling pieces of the parquet floor. So, also, a great collectible for all you Celtics fans out there. And thanks, as always, to the one and only. And happy birthday. Phil turned, I'm not going to say how old. Phil turned something, took a turn for the worse this week, if anybody knows Phil. God bless him. Phil is still standing and celebrated a birthday this week. We are at the Fours Restaurant and Sports Bar, a place that I've haunted over about a quarter of a century. And it's great to be here. And just to my left, it's out of the shot, is Robert's jersey from as the Big Three are displayed, and story behind that we're going to get into here in a moment. Also, Robert, he's not here in person. He's going to be joining us in just a minute. During the COVID pandemic, you really don't join too many people in person anymore anywhere, as it turns out. But we want to say that he is here more than in spirit, because I'm sure Robert is aware of the fact that he is on the menu here at the Fours. And I just want to remind everybody, if you visit the Fours here on Canal Street, voted by Sports Illustrated as the #1 sports bar and restaurant in the entire nation, they have, under their Hall of Famers, the Robert Parish. And, of course, that is a grilled seasonal portobello mushroom, roasted red peppers, and that comes on the toasted Parmesan focaccia bread with provolone cheese and balsamic glaze, and that is approved by the chief at set you back about $12.99. So hopefully that's something that Robert would have put on his menu, would have been part of his diet. Pretty strict diet too. He's always been very much avowed in terms of his nutrition and conditioning. That's why you play as long as he did in the NBA. Well, introduction could take a while, so let me get through this as quickly as possible, just to remind everybody, if you have forgotten about some of the accomplishments, I'm sure it'll start coming back to you. Robert Parish, 21 seasons in the NBA, tied for second all-time. Vince Coleman just announcing his retirement this week, actually, at 22 seasons. Mentioned also top 50 all-time NBA performer. Robert does hold the record for most NBA games, 1,611. That is first overall in the history of the NBA, going back to 1946. And oldest to start an NBA game. He started a game at 43 years, 118 days back in his final season in the NBA in Chicago. And also career stats, over 23,000 points, over 14,000 rebounds, and was a four-time NBA champion. Of course, three of them right across the street where he used to get his mail with the Celtics in 1981, 84, and 86, and then with the Chicago Bulls in 1997. He is a 9-time NBA All-Star and holds the record for defensive rebounds. Of course, anybody that follows the NBA knows that there was a discrepancy in statistics for a while in terms of rebounds, total rebounds, offensive and defensive. But he holds the all-time mark with 10,117 rebounds all-time. That is defensive rebounds all-time. And without further ado, HOF 2003, you know him as the Chief. Many know him as the Chief. If he walked in right now, he'd probably get a little Chief chant. Robert Parish from Shreveport, Louisiana, his hometown. Welcome, Robert. Great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me, Bernie.
Well, where do we start? I guess we start where you've come full circle, and that's Shreveport, Louisiana. You were born there at four children in the family, and you were the oldest of the four children of Robert and Ada Parish. And in terms of your early basketball history, I found that quite intriguing. You did not choose basketball. Basketball, quite frankly, chose you, and maybe bullied, berated, and coerced you into playing basketball, as it turns out. Could you tell us about that and the early influence on your basketball career?
Well, your assessment is accurate. Being that I was the tallest student in junior high school and high school, my junior high school coach said that I was this tall. I was that tall for a reason. At the time, I was 6'7", and in the 7th grade, and so he's saying that I should give basketball a try. Even as I said before, I never liked basketball. I would play baseball and football, and so I finally got tired of his mouth, so I went out for the team. And my first few practices, I kept telling myself, this is not a good idea. So I stopped going to practice. And so I didn't show up for practice the second day. So the junior high school coaches, named Coleman Kidd, came by my house, wanted to know was anything wrong. And I told him that basketball is not for me because I couldn't catch it, I couldn't hold it, I couldn't dribble. All I could do was just look at it. And so once my parents found out that I had given my word that I was gonna give the sport a try, so it was a done deal. So I was gonna play basketball whether I liked it or not. So that's how my basketball career got started, between my junior high school coach and my parents.
And your parents, and once again, I know from doing some research about your parents that you committed to something, you were committed to something, and there was going to be no turning back.
You give your word, you don't walk it back. You know, you give your word, stick with it. And so they also said that if you give your word and don't stick to it, that means that you're a coward. Don't take it back, don't walk it back.
So your basketball career started, and also the legend, if you will, of the number. I mean, 00 in any of the major sports is not exactly a popular number. There's been a few 00s. Jim Otto was in the NFL with the Raiders, the famous Raiders center. But as far as 00, just to give us the background there, it really wasn't something. Once again, you didn't choose the number kind of chose you.
Well, beginning of the season, Coach Key was handing out the jerseys. First, it started in 5, and then the second unit. And being that I was the worst player on the team, I was the last player to get a jersey, and it turns out it was 00. And my teammates was teasing me that it was fitting that I had 00 since I couldn't play, so they started calling me Double Nothing. That was my nickname.
Well,
junior high school, that was my nickname, Double Nothing.
Double, not double or nothing, but double nothing. Exactly.
Double nothing, yeah.
Double nothing. And well, from that inauspicious, very inauspicious beginning, you went on to high school and at Woodlawn High School, and blossomed as a dominant performer, winning a Louisiana 4A state championship. And thus the fact that as a guy that was maybe, I guess, just short of 7 feet, then you mentioned 6'6", and I believe in the 7th grade, there was certainly some attention for you to be able to take your basketball skills and to move on and to parlay that into an education at the college level.
Yes, I was very fortunate that I was very good at basketball because I had a number of scholarships, which I was very fortunate and proud of because there was one less thing that my parents had to be concerned about was paying for my college education. So I am very thankful for basketball for a number of reasons.
Won the state championship. On the way, you set a record, 52 points against Lake Charles. And I thought one of the remarkable things was, do you remember who you beat in the state championship? The game was in Alexandria, Louisiana. Do you remember the opponent from the state championship game, Robert?
Rick Roby, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, and it was
I think it was Rick Roby's team. I can't remember the name of the team.
Rummel High.
That's it. That is it.
That's right. Rick Roby and Rummel High for the state championship.
Yep.
And also noted you fouled out of that game with 3:55 left. You must have had a comfortable lead for you to be able to foul out. The franchise fouled out, but you still were able to hang on and win.
We were able to hang on and win, Bernie, by 1 point. We just had enough offense, just a big enough lead that we was able to hold off the opponent.
And held them off. You did, and had that great, the only in America moment there from the basketball gym, the state championship, and carried off the court. So from double nothing to carried off the court from 7th grade to senior year, they looked at you a little bit differently.
Yes, I finally gained their respect. It took a while, but my teammates started to look at me through a different lens.
Indeed, they did. They had to look pretty far up for that lens to be able to focus too.
Yes, they did.
but indeed, and from all indications, and not surprisingly, Parade High School All-American 1972, roughly 250 to 300 schools chasing you down, and once again, you narrowed it down to about 7 schools. I guess the most prominent of those schools, the one with the biggest profile, was Florida State. Arkansas was also there, Indiana, Memphis State, Northwestern State, and Jacksonville. Of course, the A-Train, Artis Gilmore, that played at Jacksonville. So some fairly high-end programs, but you made the decision to really stay close to home and go cross-town to independent school at Centenary.
Yes, I was a young father in high school. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to stay close to home. Had I not been a young father, I think my other decision would have been University of Indiana because of Coach Knight. I liked his philosophy and his approach to the game of basketball. And I like the fact that you always could do better. That's one of the things I always liked about Coach Fitch. No matter how well you played, you could have played better. And that's one of the things I liked about Coach Knight. He always pushed his players. They could do better. You could be better, and you can play better.
You walked into a situation also at Centenary that you had to know going in was going to lower your profile because of some NCAA issues that they had, that you weren't going to be able to potentially play in the NCAA tournament. But yet it seemed like you had a rapport there. You had enough of a rapport to, once again, commitment was made. You stayed loyal to Centenary through the 4 years. There was no jump to the pros, and there was no transfer for you.
Oh, that was not going to happen. My parents were not hearing that. As I said before, my parents was of the philosophy, once you commit to something or someone, you do not walk it back. So there was no leaving Centenary, unless, of course, the college burned down. That's the only way I would have got out of my commitment to Centenary College.
Mm-hmm. And you had the opportunity to play there. I got to tell you a story, Robert. I covered football for Harvard, and I covered football for Boston University. And a guy that I broadcast with, I was his color analyst. Guy you may know, if you remember, Doug Brown did some Celtics games back in the 80s. Yes. You might have met Doug Brown. Yes. And I was his broadcast partner. We played Indiana State back in 1987. And, of course, Doug and I were out there for a BU football game. And, of course, we're just a couple of tourists in Terre Haute. So we went by the Hulman Center, and I'll never forget visiting the Hulman Center. I walked in, and we wanted to look around and see all the Larry Bird related memorabilia. And the custodian was mopping the floor, and we walked by, and we were a couple of tourists from Boston, and we said, really excited, "Gee, did you see Larry play?" And the guy kept mopping, And we asked him a couple of other questions. No answer. And he finally looked at us and said, "There was nothing here before, Larry, and there's been nothing here since." Now, if I visited the Gold Dome in Shreveport, would the custodian have told me the same thing about Robert Parish and Centenary? Nothing before, nothing since.
I would agree with that.
Okay,
Yes.
fair enough.
Without a doubt. I'd agree with that assessment.
Indeed. You did run into not only a future teammate, but one of your closest friends, say, in the NBA and outside the NBA during your college career. Centenary is an independent. You played an independent schedule, but you played against the Miners of UNC Charlotte on 3 occasions. And across the way was a guy that you would become very close with, Cedric Maxwell. What do you remember about those 3 college clashes that you had with UNC?
Just like UNC could not match up with me, my team sitting there could not. We did not have an answer for Cedric Maxwell. So I would tease him. They didn't have an answer for me, and we didn't have an answer for Cedric. So we always tease each other about that, and how close and how competitive the games were, because each game could have gone either way. Either side could have won. And one thing I want to say about Cedric's career, he may never get the accolades and the acknowledgement that his career deserves. One of the best to have done it, rather, and he may never get his true acknowledgement for him as a basketball player. Mm-hmm. Other than his jersey is hanging from the rafters.
Yes.
That's a start.
That's exactly. That's a
start. Yes,
we can
right.
hope.
That's a start.
We can hope it might finish somewhere else, if you will.
Absolutely, down the road, if you will.
That's right, down the road, down the Mass Pike from where I'm sitting.
Absolutely.
Yep, town called birthplace of the game.
Yes.
And another observation you had, you played, pretty good schedule as far as Centenary teams that you played. Obviously, you played UNCC, South Alabama. You swept Texas that year, Virginia Commonwealth, Illinois State, Southern Mississippi, Utah State. You also, one of only 5 games you lost that year. You did make a trip out to Vegas and played a pretty strong 29-2 UNLV team. They had a guy named Reggie Theus on the club. Do you remember anything about playing out in Vegas against UNLV?
Yeah, Reggie shot a lot. I remember that. and they were, as you said, a very hype team with a lot of notoriety, very accomplished team. And they were one of the few teams that believed in the transition game. They ran an every opportunity. So if you wasn't in good physical conditioning, they was going to run you off the floor.
That was certainly their style. They were the running, talk the Shack and the running rebels.
Yeah, the running rebels.
The run. You got a taste of that by going out to the Thomas and Mack Center there during your career. Yes. And the end of your career at Centenary, obviously there was no opportunity. Unfortunately, you can only speculate as far as going to the NCAA tournament. There's only 3 teams that have gone first time to the NCAA, have appeared and gone to the Frozen Four. To the Final Four. One of them was Indiana State with Larry. The second one was the Miners with Cedric. And you can only speculate as to, you guys probably could have done some damage in the NCAA tournament with Centenary.
Oh, we would throw some. We'd have tore some lining out of some backsides because we were strong at every position.
Yep.
Every position. Our starting 5 was a threat offensively. So that's one of the reasons why we were so tough and such a challenge to other teams, because our starting 5, we all could cause problems, and we exploited all mismatches. Whoever had the mismatch, that's who we went to. So we kind of reminded me of the Celtics in the 80s when Larry, Kevin, myself, and DJ and Dan and all of us were bowling together. We took advantage of any mismatch, any weak spot, any weak link in the chain. We exploited that.
And proving the fact that at 7 feet and averaging almost 25 points a game and almost 17 rebounds, even at Centenary and not being able to go to the NCAA tournament, they're going to find you, and they certainly did. And you turned out to be the 8th pick in the 1976 draft, and drafted also included a couple of other Hall of Famers with Adrian Dantley, your good friend DJ Alex English were all part of that draft. You get drafted to Golden State, and you come to a team coached by Al Attles. A big star was Clifford Ray at the time, and a team that was coming off of an NBA championship at that time. What about the experience of going out to Golden State as a rookie?
I enjoyed my experience. First of all, being drafted. It just a confirmation what my parents used to tell me, because you may not know this, Bernie. When I was in college, there was also the ABA.
Right.
So I got drafted all 4 years of college by the ABA. What was it? New Orleans Jazz, which is now the Utah Jazz. So they drafted me all 4 years. So my parents used to tell me, if you are that good of a player or an athlete and you have aspirations to play at the next level, they will find you. And that turned out to be a fact. So to answer your question, I was very fortunate that Clifford Ray did not see me as a threat. He kind of took me on his wings and showed me what it takes to be a professional athlete. Just not about running down the floor, it's about eating right, taking care of your body. And he was into nutrition and weightlifting when it wasn't fashionable to be lifting weights and come into camp physically ready to play an NBA game. So I learned a lot from Clifford, and I definitely appreciate his tutelage. Definitely expedited my transition into the NBA.
You think about that, you had some great tutelage and mentoring, because one of the things when people think about you, Robert, is they think about you really being ahead of your time: physical fitness, nutrition regimen, martial arts, all these aspects of your off the court game added up, and probably factored in pretty heavily to your longevity of being able to play for over 2 decades. The fact that you started that early on.
I think so. It certainly played a part, especially the stretching and the nutritional part of my regime off the basketball court. Makes a big difference what you put in your body. And also, another thing I learned from Clifford, which we all do, we all put something bad in our system: sugar, alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever it may be. He always said, nothing wrong with doing that, but you got to work extra the following day. And that's something I learned early on too. Like if I've been out drinking or whatever, I always make sure that I did some extra cardio work, sit in the steam or sauna, to sweat out those impurities. And that definitely, in my opinion, contributed to my longevity.
Indeed. And when you were with the Celtics, you probably had DJ sitting next to you in the sauna, because you guys were probably out running the night. If you were running, you were probably running with DJ the night before. He was one of your buddies.
No comment. You're right. Yeah, that was my road dog, no question.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, 4 years in Golden State, and a team that, really from the height, championship team, and then a team that was really on the decline, if you will, and a bit directionless. And at the time, 1980, just passed, I believe, 40 years ago, but I believe it was June 9th was the trade, so we're about 3 weeks beyond 40 years. You get the word that you have been traded across the country and you're going to become a Boston Celtic. What about your initial reaction to that, and the fact that you were going to be joining the most storied franchise, most successful traditional franchise in the NBA?
Well, when I got the call initially from the Warriors, I was stunned, because we was in the middle of negotiation for an extension on the contract, because I was going into my 5th year, which was an option year. And then I get a call that I've been traded to the Boston Celtics. So I always described it as going from the outhouse to the penthouse, because we was going nowhere fast, because they had just got rid of our best player, which was Rick Barry. And then Clifford was having ongoing knee issues. He couldn't seem to stay healthy. So it was like a blessing in disguise. I resented the trade initially because I think everybody that is traded or joins a new team through free agency, you kind of get that sense of not being wanted. You worn out, you're welcome. So after I got past my self pity, I was all excited, about the trade and look forward to it. Plus, too, I was surrounded by some great talent, and so as you know, when I got traded to Boston, that catapulted my career to the next level.
And the fact that you and Kevin McHale came in the same deal. I don't know anybody, Robert. I don't know if you feel the same way. I think maybe you do. Can dispute it is the all-time steal in the history of the NBA and maybe in sports. The fact that the Celtics added you and Kevin McHale in the same trade with Golden State. One of Red's finest hours, one of his many strokes of genius. That might have been the pinnacle.
That was a stroke of genius from this perspective. It turned out to be the steal of the decade or century, whatever, because nobody had no idea that Kevin and I were going to turn into the players that we turned out to be. In hindsight, it looks like, Red just raped Golden State, because of the magnitude of the players that we turned out to be. No one could anticipate that because the narrative about me, my time in with the Golden State Warriors were I was indifferent, I didn't care, I didn't show any emotions. And so the verdict was out in terms of what type of player I was going to be. And Kevin was an unknown because he's just coming out of college. So right. No one knew, that we was going to turn out to be the players that we was going to be.
Your coach, when you come to Boston, was Bill Fitch. And I've seen there's been references to the fact that the trade happened on June 9th. Shall we say you didn't exactly get into the gym and dedicate yourself to your training in anticipation of coming to Boston? It was you maybe relaxed a little bit that summer before training camp and coming in for your first Celtics camp?
Bernie, relax would be an understatement. I took the whole summer off. I started training 2 weeks before training camp started,
wow.
Which was probably one of the biggest mistakes of my athletic career. I learned a valuable lesson. There are no off seasons. It's a basketball season year round. You can't take much time off. And after that invaluable experience, I only allowed myself 10 days of doing nothing before I started training again. So it turned out to be a valuable lesson in disguise. Taking that summer off, which I should never have done, and I never had did that before. But I was just, after I thought about the trade, I was like, man, this is a blessing in disguise. So I just like, I was walking around on a cloud all summer when I should have been in somebody's gym working out.
Absolutely. You celebrated a little bit too long and loud.
Too much, exactly.
A little bit too much. As you look back, Bill Fitch, just to give us some perspective on Bill Fitch, and then if I can extend the question, we say at the track there's horses for courses. Was Bill Fitch the right coach for you when you came to the Celtics? And then was K.C. Jones the right coach when you were established with the Celtics as you look back?
Bill Fitch was the right coach for all of us, for Larry, Kevin, myself, Tiny, Dave Campbell, everybody that was on that team. He was the right coach because of his attitude about winning. He had this unshakable confidence in us. Bernie, he was telling us that we were a championship team the first day of training camp. And he preached that message every day, all through the season. And that's one of the reasons why we beat Philadelphia, because as you may remember, Philadelphia had us down 3-1.
Yep.
And nobody would have faulted us had we threw in the towel and said, we can't come back. But Coach Fitch would not let us not believe that we could come back and win that series. And that's one of the reasons why I never forget him as a basketball coach, because what he did for my career, because he instilled the mental toughness. I always had the physical makeup about what it took to be a professional, But he took my mental, well, not only mine, but the team mental toughness to a whole nother level. You know, that unshakable confidence in yourself when nobody else believes in you, because not many people believed in Robert Parish when I first went to Boston because of the narrative that followed me from the Warriors. And not only that, I don't think any of us understood exactly what it took to win an NBA championship. And that's one of the reasons why I have such high regard for Coach Fitch. Because Coach Fitch knew what it took to win a championship, and he passed that message on to us every day. It's not so much, it's not all the time about skills, Bernie. Sometimes it's about will.
Well, yeah.
You gotta want it more than your opponent. And that's the message that Coach Fitch instilled in all of us. Because there are times when you don't want to be out there or you tired, and that's when the mental toughness, that's when the will comes into play.
And as an extension, K.C. Jones with a more established team, was he the right guy at the right time later in the career of you and your teammates?
Yes, because KC had a soulful touch. You know, he wasn't as stern and as disciplined as Coach Fitch was, because we were a veteran team and we knew what it took to get it done. So we didn't need that whip, so to speak. You know, pop heads, you know, that dictator mentality. We no longer needed that. And that's why KC was the ideal coach for us, because he knew when to put his foot in our backs and he knew when to back up. Coach Fitch never backed up. He kept his foot to the pedal all season long. He never let up. And we no longer needed that much pushing and prodding. And that's something that Coach Jones understood. He understood that.
The center position, and going back to when you come to the Celtics and win the NBA championship your first year in 1981, and then with the great Celtics run with the championships to follow, 84, 86, 5 trips to the finals. The center position at that time, you were banging heads every night with Moses Malone, Kareem, Patrick Ewing, Olajuwon. You look at the center position today, I look at it, Robert, as one of the positions that really has changed the most in sports. I mean, it went from the marquee position that it was in the 80s and the focal point that it was. The game is so much different today. Do you think about that in terms of what the position was when you played it and the importance of the position, as opposed to the way the game is now, that it's so dramatically different?
Even though I like the look of today's game, and I have to give a shout out to in my opinion, the top 3 centers, and that's Embiid, Towns, and Davis, Anthony Davis. And one of the reasons why I respect their game, Bernie, because not only do they take their game out where the small players play, because they can go out to the three-point line, three-point and in, and be effective, they still do big man things. What I mean by that, they still play defense, they rebound, they rim protect, they block shots, they run the floor, the transition game. So I like the fact that they still a two-way player. They're not one-dimensional. And to answer your question, I always think the center is always going to be valued as long as you can put the ball in the basket. If you can perfect that 10 feet and in around the basket and shoot a high percentage, the center is always going to be in demand and held in high regard. Because at the end of the day, Bernie, it's all about putting the ball in the basket.
Right.
You got to be a threat. If you're not a threat today, they're going to phase you out of the league. And I think that's one of the Dwight Howard. I think that's why he's having a problem finding a home, because the game is passing by. He can't shoot. He's not dunking or getting lobs. He's just basically a one-dimensional player, and that's defensively, because he don't give you defensively.
Yeah, he hasn't. Hasn't evolved.
It's unfortunate that he didn't develop his offensive game, because he's so athletic coming out of high school. So no one never enforced that he developed his offensive game. But I think that's one of the reasons why he's struggling to find a home right now, He's one-dimensional. The game has passed him by.
Got to ask you about the defensive aspect of your game also. How much physically did you send a message? Of course, the rules are a little different now than they are then. I got another question about that. But in terms of how you defended and how you maybe sent a message over the course of the game, or maybe established early in the game with guys that maybe wanted to be able to play you low and drive on you, was that something you always had in mind, to be able to send that message and to have a physicality?
I'm old school from this perspective. The paint, that's my house. No uninvited guests. So I always wasted one foul almost every game. And I consider it to be a hard foul. I wasn't going to trying to block the shot. I was trying to make body contact. I'm sending a message. You're not going to come down the lane unimpeded, unprotected. I'm going to F you up one foul, sending a message. And trust me, they looking for me when they drive into the basket after that. But that's the way we play together. Not only myself, but Moses, Kareem, Bob Neal, Patrick, all of us. We send a message. Waste one foul, send a message. And trust me, the traffic to the lane slowed way down, buddy. Way down.
Absolutely. Message received.
Exactly.
Yep. You got 5 of them. You might as well waste one early. There you
Waste one. Absolutely.
Waste one. Absolutely.
Waste one.
You know, obviously the success of the Celtics, the championships 81 and in 84, and there was an arrival of the scene of another dominant player, a Hall of Famer, certainly was destined to be a Hall of Famer, and a guy that had his share of physical struggles and ailments. And once again, Red had an opportunity, always looking to improve the team, plug holes in the team. And a guy named Bill Walton was available. And Bill Walton arrives on the scene in 1985. What was your reaction? And can you just give us some perspective about that, about Bill Walton coming and joining, this group of Hall of Famers, obviously a superior team, a dominant team. And now you add a guy that, if healthy, would be be able to enhance that.
What I said to myself, Bernie, it's about effing time I got some help. This is what I said to myself. And I will never forget this, Bernie. One of the first places that Bill Walton came to once he landed in Boston and talked to Red, he came to my house and wanted to know was I okay with him joining the Celtics, which he did not have to do because I had no say in the roster. But he told me that if I wasn't comfortable with him being on the team, he was not going to sign the contract. So that's one of the reasons why he introduced me and presented me in my Hall of Fame induction, because of my respect and admiration for Bill Walton. I would always have high regard and hold Bill in high reverence because of that one action of his.
And as far as you certainly had pretty good working knowledge of what it was like, and just to tell us, what was it like to play against him? When he was healthy, what was that experience like in terms of the whole group of centers that we've been discussing at the time in this golden era of the NBA?
Bill Walton was one of the best to do it, in my opinion. He had the athletic ability to be not only a dominant player on both ends of the floor, but an exceptional passer for a 7-footer. And there are days in practice when he was feeling good, he disrupted practice. No layups, no short jumpers. He had almost cat-like reflexes for someone his size. His hand-eye coordination were exceptional, and his ability to get off the floor a second and a third time, to go for a rebound was second to none. It's unfortunately that his career was cut short because of injuries, and that's another reason why people overlook him a lot of times, because his career was cut short. And when they're talking about the all-time great centers, you cannot forget about Bill Walton, because he was a puzzle that was hard to figure out, Bernie. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. And had one, I thought my shot was ugly. He had one of the ugliest jumps I but it went in. That's all that matters.
Absolutely, but effective. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Long as it falls. And,
That's true.
you mentioned about him coming. You were grateful for the help. So you look back at that year in terms of being able to bring Bill in, spell you. You must have felt that much pressure down the stretch and into the playoffs, and with the run that the Celtics were on that year and how dominant that team was.
And I always have said this. We won the 86 championship because Bill Walton was a difference maker. No one had an answer for I call him William. I don't call him Bill. I call him William. Nobody had an answer for William. He was a difference maker on both ends. They couldn't, because there were nights, Bernie, when he showed you why he was MVP of the league. He dominated, and he was coming off the bench, and he dominated the game. Oh, a force to be reckoned with. I appreciate the fact that Red went out and got him, but after playing against him every day and him making me a better player and seeing what he did night in and night out, I have another level of appreciation for his athletic ability.
Question that has become, I think, more and more popular. I'd say a question around the barrooms, but during the pandemic, nobody's in barrooms anymore. But question nonetheless, people seem to be infatuated, if not obsessed with 86 Celtics, 96 Bulls. I mean, who better than you to comment? You came to the Bulls for the 97 championship, but your 86 Celtics, 67-15, 15-3 in the playoffs. The 96 Bulls were 72-10 and 15-3 in the playoffs. You match them up. If you put them into the computer, who wins, Robert? Who better than you to give us your perspective on that?
I give us the nod for this reason, Bernie. Bill Walton. That's the difference. Bill Walton is the difference maker. Even though we had Wetman and we had other solid talent, the Bulls and no one else had an answer for Bill Walton. And especially when nothing wasn't hurting, when he was feeling good, he dominated. And the Bulls, with all due respect to Scotty and Rodman and Michael, Luke Longley don't have a shot. Bill Wilson, they just in the way. Because Bill Walton don't even see them. They don't even exist because he was so much better than they were.
Yeah, those guys would have been collateral damage.
So to answer your question, we would have won, and Bill Walton would have been the main reason why we would have won the series.
Got to ask you before we get back to basketball. We're on the subject of Bill Walton. Bill was a bit of a social director for the Celtics when he came in. What do you remember? What do you remember about the field trip that he organized out to the Worcester Centrum to catch his favorite band, the Grateful Dead? You were a little bit out of your element, but were you a deadhead by the end of the night, Robert?
I was. I cannot lie. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought it was going to be all, what would be the correct assessment? Hard rock, but it's more like a bluesy type rock and roll. And I must say I'm a fan now. I'm a fan of the Dead. And I never thought I would say that. I was like, I was saying to myself, this is going to be a long night. And it turns out it wasn't. I actually enjoyed myself. There was a few songs I got up, I was shaking my little narrow behind. Shoot, I must say.
Bill Walton, not only therapeutic on the court, but he changed your musical interests. You love your jazz and your R&B. But, yep, he made you a deadhead by the end of the night.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. So you're giving the nod to the 86 Celtics. I'm not surprised. Also, just getting back, we talked about just a moment ago with the center position. The rules today, somebody had mentioned to me about if they called the game between the 86 Celtics and 96 Bulls, today's rules, the rules of the 80s, a little bit different in terms of the physicality and also with the man-to-man and the zone defenses.
With all that freedom of movement, Oh my! I don't even think about what the score would be. Oh my goodness! and think about it from this perspective, Bernie. We were both serious defensively. We both played the disruptive, smothering type defense. But with all that freedom of movement, you can't put your hands on anyone. Oh, there's been some big numbers scored. I know that. Oh my goodness. It'd been interesting.
That's for sure. Be a high scoring series. That's
Yes,
for sure.
it would be.
Yep.
Man.
Yep. And you finished up there with the Bulls and helped Coach Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan and the Bulls to that '97 championship. One story, I guess, that's been told recently was you had a little bit of a challenge, a little bit of an on-court challenge one day from Michael. There was a little inter-squad, and Michael, obviously driven to win, is well documented, and he was losing that day, and you were a bit of a factor in the reason that his side was losing. But just give us a little bit of perspective on that.
Well, we scrimmage almost every day, similar to the Boston philosophy were, because it keeps your game sharp and keep you focused and great for conditioning. But anyways, this particular day we were practicing. I started off with the starting five, and he put Luke Longley with the second team. So after one game, which was, by the way, the only game that Michael won, by the way, we played 7 games. The only game that his team won. So he put me back with the second unit. So we kicked their butt 6 straight games. So when Phil said, bring it in, after Phil, went over what to expect for tomorrow practice and who was going to play. We had a game the following day, who our opponent was, and he always handed out game films of your opponent, your individual opponent, to make sure you watch the video and be prepared. And so excuse me, Phil, I got one question for the, I call it starting five stat rats. So I said, Michael, you and your stat rats, how did you like that ass whooping? So he took it personal. So he told me that he would F me up. We went back with the whole trash talking, F you, and I'm like, F you back, but it was all harmless. Wasn't any big deal. Mm-hmm. People make more out of it than it actually was. It was just a lot of trash talking. That's all it was.
Mm-hmm. Well, you had Larry as a captain. You had Michael Jordan as a captain for that one season. Much different in their approach in terms of both driven to win and as competitive as imaginable, but different approach, but different approaches work, just like Bill Fitch and Casey Jones.
Both styles work. Michael was more in your face when he felt like you wouldn't pull in your weight, or he felt like that you could do better. He challenged you verbally. Larry, on the other hand, he just led by example. When he felt like he was coming up short, his attitude was, I could do your job and my job. That was Larry's mentality. Michael, like, no, I'm not doing your job and my job. Do your own effing job. And that was the difference. Larry was I always feel like Larry made the best leader, because after a while, if you are a person that yells and screams, after a while people tone you out. They don't hear you. You're not getting your message across. But as you said, and I will mirror what you just said, both styles were effective and both styles worked.
And that got you the opportunity to win the 4th championship. Your loyalty, we've talked about it. It's certainly a recurring theme, really, of your legacy, whether it be following through when you first had the opportunity to play basketball, not giving up, being loyal to Centenary. And then of the big 3, you were the last man standing with the big 3. 14 years with the Celtics. You did have an opportunity to move on. The first place that you moved on was you spent a couple of years in Charlotte. You had that opportunity.
Right. Well, it was a great landing spot for me. They had a up and coming and promising young center in Alonzo Mourning. So it was, in my opinion, it was an ideal landing spot for me, because I didn't have to be the focal point of the team. I could just pretty much sit back and watch Alonzo, do his thing and help mentor and show him what it takes to be a professional athlete, similar to what Clifford Ray did for me. I tried to do that for Alonzo. And so, actually, a funny story. I had retired, and this when he had gone back. He had left New Jersey and gone back to Miami. And so that's when the NBA used to have what they call a goodwill touring team, retired athletes to go from playoff game to playoff game and support the playoffs. And so Lonzo walked over to me and said he wanted to thank me because he started taking yoga and other stretching classes, and he said that it made a difference in his career. So he wanted to thank me for showing him, what I did to make my career longer and play at a high level. And he wanted to thank me for being willing to share my knowledge. So I appreciated that.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, just like you with Clifford Ray, the passing of the torch, and you were able to pass it to another great young player. That's
yes.
Absolutely.
That was a feel-good moment.
Absolutely. Very rewarding for you as a veteran. Indeed. And the nickname, the Chief, and I guess it's commonly thought that Cedric Maxwell gave you the nickname. I often wondered about the whole concept of the Chief, the character from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, whether you were a fan of the movie. Turns out I dug a little deeper, and it was very flattering for you because of the fact that you're a big fan of the movie and a big fan of Jack Nicholson.
Yes. Matter of fact, I think that's why I got the name the Chief, because when I came to Boston, I didn't talk much, but when I was talking and carrying on with all the locker room shenanigans, I was like, you got to see this movie, man. One Flew the Cuckoo Nest. Incredible movie. And so obviously Cedric watched it one day, and he was like, I know why you like that movie so much. You just like the Chief. You don't have much to say. And everybody think you can't talk, but you got a lot to say when you are talking. So he started calling me the Chief, and I don't know how it happened or why it happened, but the nickname stuck, the Chief.
It surely did stick, and once again, you'd walk down the streets of Boston, and the chant would begin right here on Canal Street, where I'm sitting right now, across from Causeway Street, for the Chief. Did it depress you at all that Jack Nicholson was such a big Laker fan? Did you have any interaction with Jack Nicholson during your career?
Yes, during the game, I should have said during the warm-ups, he would always be courtside, so we would chat. He'd always say, Chief, how you doing? I heard that you're a big fan of one of my movies in particular. And then he was like, roll his eyes, for One Flew the Cuckoo's Nest. He was like, roll his eyes. So yeah, Jack, that's true. I am a fan. So he's always been cool with me because of once he learned that I was a fan of his career.
You look back at those Celtics teams and being part of that special time in Boston and being part of the Big Three, obviously. And I know you've often said it was a Big Four because of the time when Cedric was there. But as you look back, does anything in particular stand out? Is there any moment in particular? It might be a championship. It could be a playoff game that we maybe don't think of. But is there anything that if you had to think of one, you kind of close your eyes that comes back to you immediately about all the success that you had in a really special era of Celtics basketball?
When I think about my time playing with some of the best players ever, one thing I always admired about Cedric, about Larry, Kevin, Dennis Johnson, Tiny Archibald, they got better every year, Bernie. Every year they came back better. They did something a little bit better, or they added something to their game that made them even more effective. And that's why I have such much respect and admiration for my teammates. Even Bill Walton, as hard as it was for him to stay healthy, he came back a little bit better. And so that's one thing that stands out. And another thing that stands out when I think about that, we never took nights off like today's athlete. Mail it in. We didn't care if you won 20 games or you won 5 games. We are there to kick your butt. And that's what I always admired about. Two things I always admired about that team. We didn't take nights off, and every year we came back, we were noticeably better.
Yeah, there was no such thing as load management then and nights off the way that there is now.
Oh, we took it personal. Besides, we getting paid to play, as Coach Fish used to eloquently remind us.
Not paying you for anything else.
That's right.
Absolutely. And, you're obviously, we talked about, you're one of the top 50, the NBA 1996, their 50th anniversary. They chose the top 50 of 50 years. Who's your number one? If you had to pick and put you on the spot, who's the best? It could be somebody you played against. It could be somebody maybe before as you were growing up. But if you had to pick one, or you'd have to say he's my guy, who would it be?
The greatest talent for me, the person that sits on Mount Rushmore, can't even get it out. Mount Rushmore,
right.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Mm-hmm.
Only player, in my opinion, other than Wilt Chamberlain, nobody had an answer for. I mean, nobody had an answer for Wilt Chamberlain, and nobody had an answer for Kareem. I didn't play against Chamberlain, but I played against Kareem, and there's no answer for that hook shot. Only thing you can do is just make him work, and that's what I tried to do, make him earn every point, every possession. Don't give him nothing easy, but that's about all you can do, because across the board, no one had an answer for Kareem. And here's something else to ponder, Bernie. Kareem's first 10 years in the league, nobody was better. I feel like he had no equal his first 10 years in the league. But that's just my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I wanted to get. Absolutely. Pretty informed personal opinion when you get somebody on the top 50 list to talk about the number one. And is there any, you mentioned about that Philly series and the refuse to lose and never being a doubt in what Bill Fitch instilled in the team. Is there one game that you can think of from the Celtics? I mean, there was so many, but does there one that stand out, one big game that you come back to, or you maybe come back to when you think about your Celtics time more quickly comes back in your memory?
It wasn't my personal performance. I think Kevin scored like 50 or 55 points. I forgot what the exact number was, but he scored. I think he set like a record. And then 2 games later, down in New Orleans, Larry dropped like 60. Larry dropped 60-something points in 3.5 quarters. Amazing performance I had ever seen by an individual. And it wasn't all jump shots either. It was layups. It was free. He scored pretty much every way that you can score the basketball. Unbelievable performance. I never seen anything like it. So that's what stands out for me. One game.
Mm-hmm. For one game. Larry took it personal. It only took him 2 games to break Kevin's record. He took it personal.
Oh, no question. Oh, you talking about some egos in the locker room. Oh, my word.
But truly a team, and a team that I know you've talked about confidence and arrogance. I mean, by the color green, you guys went out and warmed up, and I don't know, what'd you have, about a 7-point lead most nights just by the color green in the warm-ups because of the level of confidence on your club?
Not only the confidence and the legacy that Boston Celtics has, I always feel like we were like 7 to 10 points better because the other team was watching us warm up. And it wasn't like we was down there dunking and alley-ooping to each other and all that. We was just laying it up casually off the glass. And our opponents were watching us play, and I was just going to huddle right before tip-off and tell Larry and Kevin and DJ and them, we got this sold up. They watching us warming up. We going to be done after 3 quarters. And sure enough, we don't even play the 4th quarter. So our legacy preceded us.
Anytime you walked in, and as you mentioned, there were no nights off either, no matter who the opponent was. You guys were up.
We didn't take nights off.
Mm-hmm.
And I always respected that about us. We came to play every single night. We didn't take nights off. And I always admired and respected that about us because with our ego and accomplishments, we could have mailed it in, and nobody would have said anything because of how good we were. But we didn't do that. We came to ball every night, and I would always respect that about us.
As far as your game and how it fit with the Celtics, I've seen several NBA pundits that have talked about the best running big man in the history of the game. You ran the court, and it goes back. I guess you had some track experience. So you ran the 880. I don't know what other events you ran, but running came natural to you. So running the court was very much part of your game, which isn't a big part of the game for a lot of big men.
Yeah, I ran in junior high school. I ran the 880 run until my junior high school coach decided I was too tall to be running track. And so I had a track background, and so running came natural to me. Only difference was Coach Fitz took my physical conditioning to a whole nother level. Well, not only my physical conditioning, but the team physical conditioning, because he always says that your physical fitness is something you always got to work on, because it's so easily to get out of shape, and because of the wear and tear of the NBA, the better physical conditioning you are, the better able you are to sustain the wear and tear of the NBA. So I was blessed with the ability to be able to run and to have stamina and endurance, and it paid huge dividends for me in my basketball career.
And as Larry often pointed out, as the distributor in many cases, he wanted to reward the big guy for running. So there was a reward factor to being able to run and to be a factor, which was very important with the Celtics offense for you.
You know, that, in my opinion, that's one of the things that made Larry special, because of his ability to create and manufacture points. And he didn't have to pass the basketball. Let's not forget that. He didn't have to pass, and he wouldn't have got criticized for not passing. But he was a willing passer, and I always respected that about Larry. If you was open, there was a very good chance you was going to get the basketball. Unless, of course, the game was on the line, then he wasn't passing it to anyone.
He wouldn't have passed to Georgia. He wouldn't have passed to his mother. That's right.
Oh, nobody. If the game was on the line, don't even think about receiving a pass.
That's right. You mentioned about Bill Walton became the man to introduce you at the Hall of Fame in your induction, and he talked about you nobility, gentility, grace. You've talked about man of few words, rather stoic, didn't show a lot of emotion. But let's take you back to May 26, 1980. Where were you on the night of May 26, 1987? Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals. I was at the game. I was sitting up in the first row of the balcony that night. And if there was one night that the Chiefs showed some emotion, the guy that sparked that emotion was the inimitable and infamous Bill Laimbeer, just to be able to articulate what that incident was in that series.
You had me thinking for a minute, Bernie.
Yep.
I was like, what is he talking about?
Yep.
The whole series, he and I had been exchanging elbows and holding and grabbing, the usual thing that goes on under the basket. And so we got tangled up, and his elbow ended up under my throat, and then he elbowed me in my throat, and I told him, Bill, watch your elbows, that's a little high, I could get injured. So he told me to go F myself. And then I just lost it. So the next time down, I just started swinging. And we all throw elbows, don't get me wrong, it wasn't the elbow, it's the fact where he threw the elbow. And because I throw my share of elbows too, which we all have done. And so that's what initiated the confrontation between us. Had he said, I understand, Chief, and there was a little high. But one thing I never understood about him, Bernie, he got off on being the bad guy. Like he wore it like a badge of honor for some reason. I never understood that. Like everybody gets physical, but he was the only player that ever played against that deliberately tried to hurt you. I never understood that. And I think that's one of the reasons why he was disliked. But he got off on people not liking him. If you can understand that. he had a warped sense of, I don't know.
Yeah, right and wrong. Yeah,
I'm going to say right and wrong, a
yeah.
self-worth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Get
You
that.
look at all those rivalries, and I'm a huge and will be forever. I can't get enough of going back and listening to the old tapes of Johnny Most. I mean, there was every playoff series was a holy war with Johnny Most, but you had Mahorn and Rulin with the Bullets. You had Bobby Jones was another one that he had. Michael Cooper was another guy that Johnny used to talk about, and Rambus,
And
and
Rambis. Yep.
all around the league. But with the Pistons, absolutely at, I was going to say, the top or the bottom of that list in terms of their physicality with the guys that they put on the court with Rodman and Lambeer and so forth.
I would say they were by far the most physical ball club we ever played against, collectively, by far. And that starts with their backcourt, Dumars and Isaiah and Vinnie Johnson. They were extremely physical and very effective with the two because kind of like in football, the more physical ball club normally wins because they intimidate the opponent. And that's another reason why I thought Detroit was successful because a lot of teams backed down from the physicality. They were so physical. It was intimidating to a lot of teams. But it worked for them though.
Yeah.
And so, and matter of fact, I think that's one of the reasons why Johnny Most, of all the teams that he loathed, not like the Pistons. Not even a little bit.
Yeah, that's right.
Goodness.
Yeah, they were in a class by themselves, and you had 5 playoff series with them in 7 years too. So there was familiarity breeds a lot of things, Robert. Usually contempt.
Normally, I know with Johnny it was contempt, but I have to say though, I respected them for what they accomplished and what they did. I didn't like the way they went about their business, but I respected it. I didn't condone it, but I certainly respected what they accomplished. So I got to nod my head to them, without a doubt.
With what they went on, as you mentioned, what they went on to accomplish.
Yes.
And you mentioned about not playing against Wilt. I found a quote from Wilt, and he referred to you as the center of the '80s. Pretty high praise indeed from Wilt Chamberlain.
In my opinion, he was the only competition that Kareem had. In my opinion, serious competition, because I feel like he was as dominant and as good as Kareem was, if not better. Not to mention his accomplishments. Now here's a stat for you, Bernie. Think about this. No, regardless of position, 50 and 35 for the season. Think about that. 50 points and
Average.
35 rebounds for a season. And he wasn't a good free throw shooter.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, impressive.
Yep. Absolutely. Classic.
And he led the league in assists. Think about that for a second. A center. Oh, he was unbelievable in my opinion. So I said that to say this. It was high praise for him to say that about me. And I'm not even in the same conversation with Wilt Chamberlain. So in my opinion, is he and Kareem and everybody else.
And everybody else is at the bottom of Mount Rushmore.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And you mentioned about those two guys and their accomplishments. You look also at the way, once again, the way the game has evolved. Is there anybody in particular? You've been out of the game. It's hard to believe you've been out since 1997. Anybody in particular that you take a shine to today, or you maybe watch a little more closely today? You're kind of your guy that you're, maybe infatuated with, or particularly have interest in.
Embiid. He's an enigma. As good as he can be with all his athletic gifts. One thing that rubs the skin off my backside is his physical conditioning. He needs to take better care of himself. And I think it's one of the reasons why he's not considered a better player because of his physical conditioning. He's too fragile, and he's too good to be that fragile. And I think that the genesis of why he hasn't done better, not individually, but team-wise, is because he can't sustain what he starts in the first 3 quarters. He runs out of gas almost every game. And that's just physical conditioning. And not to mention, he eats way too many burgers for my comfort. Way too much fast food.
Right.
He need to hire someone that just focus on physical conditioning to get him in the best physical conditioning and keep him there. And it'd be amazing what he can accomplish if he can get his butt in the best physical conditioning that he could get and maintain it. I think the one reason why he's always hurt too. He's not in shape, and that bothers me about. I think he's doing his talent a disservice because he's not in the best physical conditioning that he could be in. I don't think he ever been in the apex of his physical condition. I don't even think he come close to tapping that.
He probably has no idea how good he'd feel if he was in better shape and how much easier it'd come.
Better than sex, Bernie. And that's saying a lot. That's saying a lot.
Absolutely. That speaks volumes. You're right about that.
That's right.
No question. And, once again, the game today, and you mentioned about Embiid, when you were growing up, we talked about Wilt. Was Wilt the guy that you focused on when you really took your interest in basketball, high school and college? Was he a guy that you looked to, or were there maybe some other guys that played in the NBA at that time and before you came to the game in the 70s?
Wilt and Bill Russell.
And Bill Russell, yeah.
Always admired Russell defensive prowess, what he did defensively, the way he challenged and offset Chamberlain, which very few players they would do, by the way. Nobody stopped Chamberlain, but I thought Russell was one of the few players that slowed him down. And I thought that was because Russell was such a strong defensive presence. And so those two guys that I watched and I tried to emulate them defensively. And I think that's one of the reasons why my defensive game was strong, because I always took pride in the defensive end. I never had one thing I could always do early, Bernie, that was score the basketball. I never had a real problem with putting the ball in the basket. Once I figure out the logistics of it, the purpose of it, shooting was never a problem, but defensively, I think that's why I excel with defensively.
Being able to develop that side of your game, and of course, the ultimate measuring stick for defense was Bill Russell.
Bill Russell, in my opinion, Wilt Chamberlain was a strong defense. Chamberlain was the only player that I ever seen block Kareem hook shot 3 consecutive times down the floor. I've never seen that before or since. And that's why I have such high regard for Chamberlain defensively.
Your loyalty to the Celtics and the fact that, once again, you were the last of the big three to depart, and we can only speculate. You were with the Celtics, 2 tragic events, what might have been if these guys had been able to live on and have the careers that it seemed like they were destined for. Len Bias and Reggie Lewis, both two tragedies that were visited on the Celtics during your tenure.
Still bothers me today, Bernie. I have always said that had Len Bias lived, we would have repeated. After we won the 86 championship, we would have won it again in 87, 88 season. I feel like there was the difference. I feel like the Lakers had just a tad bit more firepower, and not to mention Larry, Kevin, and myself was nursing injuries. But that being said, Len Bias was a difference maker. If we had Len Bias, I feel like he would have got us over the hump, and we would have been a repeat. We would have beat the Lakers.
Would have been.
And getting back to Reggie Lewis,
yes,
they were definitely the future of the Celtics. I think that's one of the reasons why it took the Celtics so long to rebound, to recover. to get back to being one of the perennial championship contenders because we lost Lynn Byers and Reggie Lewis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a couple of what ifs, and there might have been a few more. You might have been doing the Bill Russell. You might have been displaying a few more rings there right now, Robert.
We would have went 5 for 5. We went to the finals 5 times. In my opinion, we'd have been 5-0
Yep.
if we had those 2 players.
Would have run the table.
Without a doubt. Yep. Without a doubt. In my humble opinion.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. humble but informed opinion. Absolutely. Yes. That I would consider. And you look now. We're here at. I just want to know if I'm curious to see. The story, the saga of your jersey here at the Fours. I don't know if you know that story, but there was a display of the 3 autographed jerseys of the Big Three, and I think we might get a shot of that with Larry, Chief, and Kevin. There they are. And there was a robbery here. There was a break-in at the Fours. But the only item that was stolen was your jersey in that robbery.
I don't know whether it's a compliment or an insult, to be honest.
Was it an inside job? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know how to take that one, Bernie.
But your agent was very quick to replace the jersey. So on the display, once again, the legends of the Fours, the #1 sports bar and restaurant in the United States. You've got Larry in green, you got Kevin in green, and in the middle, you got right there where he should be in the middle, you got the Chief, and your jersey was replaced in white. So I wanted to make sure you were aware of that since I'm sitting right under the jersey right now.
I am aware. I wasn't aware that someone had lifted it, but I want to thank Kirsten for replacing it.
Yep.
And I am proud to be on the Wall of Fame.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. You're certainly in the Wall of Fame here at the Fours. And Robert, you've come full circle back to Shreveport. And I've made an effort here at the beginning of this program. We just started a couple of weeks ago. I want to make the guests feel at home. And I just want you to know that I have a T-shirt from the last sporting event of the 20th century. It was the Independence Bowl in Shreveport. I broadcasted the game, Mississippi and Oklahoma. And, if Y2K was going to happen, Robert, I might have been knocking on your door looking for, a place to hide or something, because I got out of Shreveport on New Year's morning, 2000, after covering that game. It was my only trip down to Shreveport. So I have been in your hometown on one occasion, and it was memorable because it was the last night of the old century and the first night of the new millennium. I was in Shreveport, your hometown.
How about that? How about that?
I got my Independence Bowl football, so I could throw you a virtual pass here anyway.
Oh, good. I like that.
Open over the middle. I know you played some football there, and it'd be a pretty good target. Would have been a pretty good tight end at 7 feet. You could have changed that game too. I would think.
Oh, I'll tell you, Bernie, at 7 feet and 194, I don't know about a tight end. I don't think I was big enough.
That's right. That skinny butt was jiving to the Grateful Dead. There you go. Yeah, indeed. Well, you're back. You've come full circle. You're back home. And what about Robert Parish today in Shreveport? And what keeps you busy?
I guess the appropriate title would be I'm like an ambassador for the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of work overseas. Well, not a lot anymore, but I do some work overseas for them, promoting the NBA, during basketball camps, during meet and greet, things like that, promoting the NBA. So they keep me busy. So that's what I have on my plate right now. And of course, what Kirsten is throwing, I can't forget about her.
Absolutely.
She's keeping me busy also.
We're really appreciative of her being able to line this up for us. And as you look back, final word, you look back on your career and your legacy. Once again, you were a man of few words and had a rather stoic but effective demeanor. How do you want to be remembered as far as your legacy and the over 2 decades that you played in the NBA?
One word, dependable.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was some of my career, dependable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, if not all, most of my teammates would co-sign that, dependable.
Indeed. Bill Walton referred to you as the foundation of the team. And Jackie McMullen, when you went into, you were inducted by the New England Sports Museum with the tradition, she said, he might be easily forgotten because I'm not sure if he wanted you to remember.
There's some truth to that. There's some truth to that. I have to say, of all my teammates, I have to say that I probably had the less of an ego of Larry, Kevin, Cedric, DJ.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm probably the one that's the most casual about who we were and what we accomplished. I always took it in stride. I never got too high about it, too low about it. I was even keeled. So I think there's some truth to that.
Mm-hmm.
What Jackie assessment of me?
I noticed. Yeah, I noticed the '86 reunion. It wasn't that big a deal to you to come back.
No, it wasn't. And I don't want people to take it as a slight. It wasn't a slight. I just didn't view it as a big deal. I know what we did, and I don't need to be reminded of it. I know how great we were. I know that sounds arrogant, but that's the way I felt about it.
Mm-hmm. Robert, there's no denying that, and I'll cast my vote for dependable, and I'm going to add articulate and entertaining. It's been a lot of fun having the opportunity to share this time with you. You played the game well, and we appreciate your time here with us on the Games People Play today. Best of luck.
Great. Thank
God
you
bless.
for allowing me to be on your show, and continued success going forward.
Thank you very much. Hail to the Chief, Robert Parish, our guest here on episode 3 of the Games People Play. And I want to be able to acknowledge everybody that has made it possible. And once again, beginning with Kelly Sports, we're not here without Kelly Sports and Consulting. Once again, there was no Robert without Kirsten. And if you're looking for a pro athlete, former or current, personal appearances, sales presentations, trade shows, corporate appearances, you can give Kelly Sports and Consulting a call. They are the folks that can hook you up and help you out. You can call Kirsten at 781-888-2791, or you can catch up with her on Facebook at Kelly Sports and Consulting. And, of course, Phil Castanetti, Phil, the legend, the impresario of sports world, New England's largest sports memorabilia shop since 1986 on Route 1 in Bucolic, Saugus. And Phil wants to note that there are a number of great Robert Parish items to be had by either in person or by mail or whatever way you want to communicate with Phil at Sports World. He'll be there to set you up. And also the parquet floor. Leave it to Phil. They cut up the parquet floor. And, of course, the first call they make is to Phil. And so we want to also thank Phil and for all of his help and help in the future. And special thanks to our home here today. And once again, Robert, for 14 years, he had his mail delivered across the street on Causeway Street. We're here on Canal Street at the legendary Fours Restaurant and Sports Bar. The Fours voted, I can't argue, number 1 by Sports Illustrated of all the sports bars and restaurants in the United States. And many thanks to the Fours for Peter Colton, Jimmy Taggart, Gino, everybody, all of our hosts here. And for making it possible every week, my spirit animal and producer, Andy Bernstein. Thank you, Andy. And absolutely. And we're not here without Andy and Andy being able to set us up and get us up and running, along with all of the good folks out in Seattle. I believe they're with us. Kiwan is with us out in Seattle. I just want to make sure he was still with us. And Todd, absolutely. We got the Seattle. We are bi-coastal with the Games People Play. And we're looking forward to next week. I can tell you that we will be on the gridiron, to be determined, but it will be once again a special show for you, and we hope that you'll join us next week for the games, and every week for the Games People Play. Please like us and follow us on Facebook. And for Andy Bernstein, my producer, this is Bernie Corbett saying, play the game well. Thanks, everybody.